So welcome everyone. It's great to see you all and be back for our Sunday morning class. Good to see you, Emily. Welcome and welcome everyone. And so if anyone is here for the first time, particularly warm welcome to you. You can might type in who you are and where you're joining us from, if you'd like to, in the chat. And anyone like to type anything in, and welcome. How you doing? Share how you're doing this morning. So this is our regular Sunday morning class offered by the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW, and the Center for Mindful Living, which is part of IMCW. And I'm Hugh Byrne. I've been teaching with IMCW for going on 20 years now, and actually had a Sunday morning class every Sunday going back to the beginning of 2000, I think. So Sunday morning, it's like time for church, as it were, and so we come together for our time meditation and sharing a talk. So the format is very straightforward. We've more recently been beginning with a meditation, maybe 20-25 minute meditation, and then there'll be a talk. The theme today is it's about the first noble truth of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, and calling it non-denial of suffering, not to be in denial about our suffering, the challenges, the difficulties we face, because it's through being in non-denial and acknowledging and recognizing that we see our own role in our suffering. What we often call the second arrows that we add to our experience, add to the first arrow, which may be pain or whatever, and the second arrow being really that we want things to be different. We resist, we don't like. And if we can acknowledge our suffering and we can see where we're holding on, then the good news is that we can find our way out of suffering. That's the Buddha's teaching, and there is an end to suffering, there's freedom. And so I just want to share some reflections on that this morning. And I think we're all probably know that this weekend the big climate conference is beginning in Glasgow in Scotland, and leaders from all over the world. As I think the New York Times said today, presidents, prime ministers, and autocrats, as well as tens of thousands of activists, are there in Scotland doing good things to put pressure on. And so I'd love to dedicate our class today, our time today, to the leaders and the activists really finding a way, finding solutions, finding wise action, wise and compassionate action that can move us in a direction away from the catastrophe that's really quite close down the road and is already with us, really. But we still have time. So just holding all of them in our hearts today as we begin our time together. I hope everyone is doing well, or as well as can be at this time. And if you're holding anything that's challenging or difficult, then you're in a good place to be together with everyone else, to be together in Sangha or in community, where we can support each other and hold each other in our, as we work through the joys and the sorrows of these 10,000 joys and sorrows of this human existence, human life. So welcome to you all. Welcome those who are nearby and those who are more distant, those in Linnea in Spokane and Kerry in Saskatoon. And so we have here Katie in Denver and David in Jackson, Maine. Good to have you with us. And welcome, everyone. So we'll begin with a period of meditation. So we can just invite you to find a posture that's comfortable and relaxed. You know, we begin by, taking our seat, establishing a posture that can allow us to be here as fully as we can be here, to open to whatever is arising, and the more we can start from a place of some degree of ease, the more able we typically can be to work with whatever's arising in the body and the heart and the mind. If we're feeling really uncomfortable or we're really stressed, then we're going to be looking at it. We're going to be looking at our experience really through the lens of the stress and the worry and the discomfort. So it's really helpful to take some moments to arrive, to settle, to be here. So sit in a way that's alert, relaxed. Let your chest be open so you can breathe easily. Maybe close your eyes if, if you're comfortable doing that. And let your attention drop down out of the thinking mode. We spend a lot of time in our heads thinking about the past and the future and what we got to do and all of that. So just letting go as much as you can for this time. Let your attention come down into your body. Excuse me. Feel the contact of your body with a cushion or with a chair. Feel the weight of gravity pulling you down towards the earth. Of heaviness, pressure, contact, warmth. Just let your awareness come to your breathing. You might consciously invite the breath to deepen. Taking some longer, deeper breaths. Filling the lungs, filling the body as you breathe in. And relaxing, letting go as you breathe out. Imagine on the out breath, you're just releasing any tensions, any stresses, any discomfort, just letting them go. Just filling the lungs, filling the chest, and the breath, and then releasing. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. I begin with sharing Martha Postlethwaite's poem, which for me kind of brings me back to reminds me of what I'm doing, what I'm here for. It says, do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. Consciously creating a space in the busyness, the activity of our lives. Just opening to whatever is present right now. Letting your breathing help you settle and relax and arrive. And opening to what's present in the body and the heart and the mind. Making space for whatever is present, whatever bodily feelings you're aware of. Just letting them come, letting them go. Whatever mood or emotions might be present. Allow yourself to feel them. Make space for them. Meeting what's here with kindness and with acceptance. Notice how the mind is right now. Is it calm and settled? Or is it more busy and active? Lots of thinking. However it is, just notice. Just notice how things are with kindness. And if the mind does go off into thoughts, just let the attention come back into the body, come back to the breath. If you can bring a relationship, an attitude of friendliness, of kindness towards whatever you're experiencing right now. Everything that's met with kindness and with care can simply come and go in its own time. You might notice that everything that you experience has a feeling tone to it. Some feelings are more pleasant, maybe a warm feeling around the heart or a pleasant thought. Some are more difficult, unpleasant, feeling of discomfort or pain. Some are more in the middle, kind of grey area, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And that can be a useful lens to look at your experience through. A pleasant feeling, rather than grabbing onto a pleasant feeling and pushing away an unpleasant one, maybe disconnecting from a neutral one. You can just notice a pleasant feeling, pleasant physical feeling, pleasant mental feeling, unpleasant. Letting the feelings come and go. If it's helpful, you can let the breath be a kind of a home base for you. Resting your attention on the sensations of breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. The breath just as it is. And if the mind moves off into thought, gently and kindly incline it back to the breath, back to the body, back to this moment. Just noticing what's present, making space for it. Letting the sensations come letting them be, and then letting them go. Welcoming the guests in Rumi's metaphor. These different guests will come to visit. If we can meet whoever, whatever comes, with kindness and with care, with acceptance, then everything can come and have its time, do its dance, and then when it's ready, can pass. So we can step out of a struggle with our experience. I want this to be, I want more of this, I want less of this. And just come into a more flowing relationship with our experience. Letting whatever's here come, letting it go. Just notice what your attitude is to what's coming up for you. Is it one of tightening up and pushing away, resisting? Or is it one of welcoming, accepting? And see if you notice that there is resistance, not to make it a problem. See if you can let the allowing, the welcoming be large enough to include the resistance. Letting the resistance come and go, letting it be felt with an attitude of kindness, of care, of friendliness. Share these words from an old Native American elder story rendered into modern English by David Wagoner. It's a poem called Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes, listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to Raven. No two branches are the same to Ren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Perhaps one of the most important, most inspiring, let's say, parts of these teachings is that we can always begin again, no matter what's gone before, no matter how long we may have been lost elsewhere, caught up in, often it may be unskillful mind states and behaviors. It just requires a moment of mindfulness, a moment of awareness to come back and begin again. Just to this, whatever this is right now. Can I be with this? Can I say yes to this? And then we forget again, we get caught up in whatever habits of mind take us away. And then something triggers a remembering, and we wake up again, we come back, we begin again. This cycle of forgetting and remembering. And the more we remember, the more we increase the tendency, excuse me, to remember. We make remembering more our default. One of the original meanings of the Pali word sati, S-A-T-I, which is mindfulness, is remembering. This practice of remembering. And the more we train our mind, the more we make ourselves prone to remember. We make remembering more our default. Nothing can do us more good than a trained mind, the Buddha said. Nothing can do us more harm than an untrained mind. Not even our worst enemies, said the Buddha. In these last couple of minutes of the meditation, you might just breathe in a wish of kindness and care towards yourself, and whatever you might be holding right now. And a wish of care, of kindness. May I be happy. May I be safe. May I be held in loving kindness. And as you breathe out, just feel yourself part of this community. All of us here together today in our separate spaces, supporting each other, part of community, wishing everyone well. May you be happy, safe. May you be held in loving kindness. Wishing yourself well as you breathe in. Wishing everyone here well. Maybe go outward, out into the world, all beings. You know, at this most critical time in our human history, and may we be guided by wisdom, by compassion, by caring. Finish with the poem by the poet farmer Wendell Berry. Excuse me. The Peace of Wild Things. It says, when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water and feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. So taking your time coming back into the group. If you joined us after the beginning, welcome to you. Welcome again, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, I want to talk today about being curious about suffering. So that's the theme of the talk today, of non-denial of suffering. As you know, if you've been around these spaces for any time, that you'll have heard the word suffering more than once. As you know, it's at the core of the Buddha's teachings, and the central teaching of the Buddha on the Four Noble Truths is all about suffering. It's about the existence of suffering, the cause of suffering and craving, the end of suffering, what the Buddha called nirvana or nibbana, and the path to the end of suffering. But in many ways, and I'm not the first to say this, many scholars and also other teachers say that suffering is not the best word for what the Buddha spoke about in Pali, the first language of the written language of the Buddha's teaching. So it's Pali, related to Sanskrit. The word is dukkha. Dukkha. Dukkha is an interesting word. I think its etymology comes from a kind of a wheel, a wheel of an ox cart or some kind of a cart, and it comes from two words: du, meaning bad, and ka, meaning the wheel. So it's kind of like a wheel that's out of kilter. You know, you imagine a wagon train, you know, like the old series, and the axle gets broken, and then the wheel kind of doesn't roll along properly. And the sense of suffering as being that things being out of kilter, you know, not functioning as they should. Suffering, though, in English has this connotation. I think of it, you know, as a terrible affliction, you know, or suffering, you know, the suffering of the 10 plagues of Israel, or the, you know, a tragedy, you know, or suffering, the great suffering of a people. But what is encompassed by this word dukkha is much broader. One teacher, Tony Bernhard, gave 14 synonyms for dukkha, you know, of suffering, along with 13 other words. Some of these words were pain, unease, discontent, unsatisfactoriness, unhappiness, affliction, anxiety, dissatisfaction, discomfort, anguish, stress, misery, and frustration. So it kind of covers a very wide spectrum of kind of unpleasant, difficult, challenging feelings, you know, physical, mental feelings. I'd add to these kind of terms like resistance to the way things are, because when we're suffering, you know, typically that's what we're doing. We're resisting how things are. We're resisting some aspect of our experience. We're in struggle with our experience. So we could think of suffering or dukkha as a felt sense of unhappiness or dissatisfaction, a resistance to our experience, to what's happening. You know, often it's wanting things to be different than they are, not liking what we're experiencing. Often we feel it as contraction or tightness in the body and in the mind. So all of these kind of elements or aspects of this term dukkha that is most often, you know, translated as suffering, in that we're kind of, in a way, we're stuck with suffering as a term to translate dukkha. But it's helpful to broaden that kind of awareness of, you know, what we're talking about. I like, even though it's a clunky word, I like unsatisfactoriness. It's like things don't feel like we want them to be. It's not always suffering as such, but the sense of dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness. And then we can think of the kind of the typical ways this suffering gets expressed, the main kind of examples of it. Excuse me again. One way is or one kind of expression of it is in wanting or craving. You know, feeling like we need to have something or to get something to be okay, to be happy. We need to get that food we want, or that drink we want, or drugs, or sex, or contact, or we want to own something. You know, think of people, you know, think of we might have a device, you know, a new phone or something. I say, oh, I really want, you know, I really want that. Going to have that, or a piece of electronic, you know, electronic equipment, if that's our thing. But it could be anything. It could be wanting recognition, you know, wanting people to love you, wanting recognition or fame. You know, we experience this as a kind of a pulling towards us, like, I want this, you know, I want to have this thing, I want to have this person, or this pleasant thing that, you know, that I think will make me happy. The other side of the coin is aversion or resistance. We're wanting something that's unpleasant, painful, or uncomfortable to go away. You know, it could be expressed in disliking a person or a situation, or having a fear or worry about something that might happen. You know, what if politician X got elected or didn't? You know, or what if a particular law didn't get passed? You know, if we're focused on the political situation, that might be experienced as a real, you know, as a real sense of suffering or dukkha, of unsatisfactoriness. You know, what might happen if we don't deal with climate change in a really, really radical way? Or it could be something as simple as our neighbors making too much noise and we're wanting it to stop. You know, all of those are examples of aversion or resistance. We don't like something, we're resisting it, we want it to be different. You know, it could be feeling tired or restless or confused or bored. You know, any of those experiences, any of those mind states, like we're feeling like we're collapsing, or we're pushing it away, or we're unsure, or we're just unenthusiastic. Is kind of like a collapsing feeling. And these states are all experienced as unpleasant. We want them to be different. We want them to end. So two major expressions of kind of wanting the pleasant to continue and to have more of it, and wanting the unpleasant to end. It's like a pulling and pushing. And our lives are very much pulled along by that pulling and pushing. You know, we're wanting, I've got to get this, I've got to get rid of this. And we think in some way our happiness depends on getting more of the things that we want, or that we like, or that we think will make us happy, and getting less of the things that we don't like. You know, so organizing our lives in this way, more of the pleasant, less of the unpleasant. One of the things that we're doing, a key things that happens when we experience suffering, is that we're moving away from, or we're avoiding or escaping or resisting our present moment experience. So for example, if you're wanting something, got to have this, then the mind is fixated on something that's we're not really aware of our present moment experience. We're focused on, I got to get this thing. Our mind has been projected into the future, kind of got to have that, got to get that. We're not here with the feelings. You know, what would happen if we actually had to feel those feelings? What would we have to experience? So when our mind contracts around something that we want, you know, it becomes we focus on creating the conditions to make it happen. What can I do to get hold of this thing that I want, that I think will make me happy? The situation becomes really a problem to solve in order for us to be okay. I won't be okay unless and until I have this thing that I want, that I need. You know, we're in that contracted relationship with our experience. And in doing that, we're moving away from our direct experience. We're not actually feeling the energy of wanting or craving. We're not feeling the sensations in the body. We're not aware of our thoughts because we're being pulled along by them. We're not like able to see, oh yeah, I'm really caught up in craving here, because we're being pulled along by the craving, by the wanting in this case. I've shared before the quote from the Tibetan teacher Mingyur Rinpoche. He says, ultimately your happiness depends on choosing between the discomfort of being aware of your mental afflictions and the discomfort of being ruled by them. You know, ultimately our happiness depends on choosing between two kinds of discomfort. One is the discomfort that comes from being aware of, like, oh yeah, I'm craving right now, that I'm aware of the tension in my body. I'm aware of my thoughts being kind of obsessively thinking about things that I want. Choosing that rather than the discomfort that comes from being ruled by them, because if we're ruled by our thoughts, we're going to keep following them, and we're going to be caught up in that cycle of suffering, and we're just going to go round and round and round on that wheel of samsara, that wheel of suffering. But the other kind of suffering, the other discomfort, is to be present with our experience. Ajahn Chah talked about it as two kinds of suffering: the suffering that leads to the end of suffering and the suffering that leads to more suffering. It's another way of saying the same thing. If we keep thinking, I get this, I have it, then we get it, we think, oh, now I can be happy. But then we haven't dealt with the underlying craving. So the mind will just go on because we've repeated that wanting, that wanting has become stronger. So it just shifts to something else, you know. Maybe for a while we'll think, oh, great, I got that car, got that new car that I wanted, you know, now I feel okay. And then the mind is anxious, oh no, something else, and we glom on to that. Because what we've done is we've fueled these unskillful mind states, and then we strengthen them, and they just continue and they get stronger. But if the only way to deal with them is to really work with what's underlying them, and that's to be able to say yes to our direct experience. So in the same way, if we're feeling aversion to something, you know, it's too noisy, those people are making too much noise. You know, we focus on what can I do to change this? What can I do to make it stop, to create the conditions so I can feel okay? I'm not okay with how I'm feeling. So I think I change the situation and then I'll be okay. You know, so we might go out there and ask the people who are making the noise to stop. And that might, you know, that, okay, I'm okay because now it's not noisy anymore. Or we could put our energy into complaining. You know, that's where our energy goes. Oh, they're so thoughtless, they're so selfish. And then we just keep reinforcing the problem, you know, by either, you know, going out there to solve it, but it doesn't really solve it because we haven't dealt with what's underneath it. I pause here and say, I'm not talking about it, you know, what I am talking about here is where we get contracted around something, where we get identified with the story. Like in this case, these people are bad people. You know, we create a strong sense of self. It doesn't mean we always have to be passive. I just want to make that clear, because sometimes it can come across as though we're saying we never do anything about anything. We always just sit back and allow. or sometimes it's necessary to change things. We need to act on climate change. We're not just going to say, okay, this is terrible, isn't it awful? But, that's just the way it is. Well, it will be just the way it is if we do nothing. So what we're talking about really is what's wise action, what's skillful action. And skillful action doesn't come from reactivity. That's the important thing to note. If our action around climate change or around getting the neighbors to stop being so noisy, if it comes from reactivity, then we just keep reinforcing those unskillful mind states. But if it comes from wise action, if it comes from equanimity, if it comes from compassion, then that's wise action. So making that point clear. Same if we're stressed about something, I don't have enough time to do everything I have to do, then our energies go into the thinking, the worried thoughts, the fearful thoughts, the catastrophizing. We think we want to solve the problem out there. If I think hard enough about things, then maybe I'll solve the problem of just having too much to do. But the more we go into that thinking, worrying, then we reinforce those unskillful states and we continue with the suffering. Often too, we're not aware of our suffering. We're acting habitually in ways we've done many times before. We're worrying or we're getting angry because that's been our habitual way of responding to particular stimuli. So say we're not getting what we want, and so we're angry. And we're experiencing something as unpleasant. We're feeling tense, tight, we're feeling hot, we're having lots of thoughts. But we typically think, well, this is just the way things are. This is how I'm feeling right now. Or this is the way I am. We think a lot. Often we take our suffering to be just, well, this is just who I am. I'm an angry person. When people don't treat me right, I get angry. Or I'm just a worried person. I'm an anxious person. But what's really the case, rather than that being the essential way I am, it's really that's what we have cultivated through repetition over time. These are the seeds that we've sown. There's a saying, sow a thought, reap an act. Sow an act, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Sow a character, reap a destiny. So from the thought and the repetition of the thought, we get the repetition of the action. The repetition of the action becomes a habit. Through the habit, it becomes a character. It becomes the way we are, the way we respond. And over time, it becomes a destiny because we think, well, this is the way I am. I just keep doing this. And we keep reinforcing it. So it's not so much the way we are or the way things are. It's what we have cultivated. So what are we going to cultivate? What we don't do so often when we experience these challenging or difficult mind states or other expressions of suffering is to stay with our direct experience, to become curious about our experience. And this is really the key to ending suffering and realizing freedom. Can I stay with the underlying feelings? Can I bring kindness, acceptance to what's here? And then we stop the suffering here rather than just keep playing it out. I get this, I like it, I want it, feel good, I've got it, then I want something else, and I keep doing that. And then round and round, the cycle goes over and over, and we can go through our life in this way. But the alternative is what we do in meditation, is we learn to stay. So, okay, what am I aware of right now? So rather than saying, when you feel an itch, scratch it, or if you feel something difficult, move away from it. You don't hear, hopefully in meditation instructions, be comfortable at all costs. You know, do everything you can to be comfortable. Now, it's useful at the beginning to be as comfortable as you can be. But if all that we were doing is going towards being comfortable, then we'd feel, oh, I'm feeling, oh, let me have something to eat now. Oh, let me have something to drink. We just keep kind of following our pleasures. And if there's any discomfort, we're like, oh, no, we're going to move away from those feelings. We could be moving all the time because we're not willing to be with what we're experiencing. So that's why the instructions in meditation often feel counterintuitive. They move us in a different direction. They encourage us to go in a different direction to how we might typically respond to pleasant feelings and unpleasant feelings. So we say, welcome the guests, say yes to what's here, accept, allow, rather than resisting. Be curious about what you're experiencing. What happens when we do this? What gets revealed? What we see when we pay attention is that we're contributing to our suffering, that we're implicated in our suffering. If we're experiencing something unsatisfactory, something we don't like, there's some role that we're playing ourselves in that situation. We're adding, if you like, a second arrow. Ultimately, there's no suffering without an unskillful or an unwise relationship to our experience. The suffering requires our involvement. We're wanting things. We're in a struggle with the way things are. We're in a struggle with our experience. And that is what is really creating the suffering. If there's a wise relationship to whatever we're experiencing, there's no suffering. So there could be something, for example, we could be experiencing sadness, let's say about a loss we've suffered, loss of a relationship or a loved one. Let's say there's sadness, there's grief, but rather than adding to the sadness, we actually say, okay, I'm going to be with this. I'm going to open as fully as I can to the bodily feelings. I'm going to open to the emotion of grief. I'm going to allow space for that. I'm going to be aware of the thoughts that come, maybe to add to the situation of like, oh, this is going to go on forever. And I'm going to allow that thought to come and to go. I'm going to make space for all of this. And when I do that, then there's just the first arrow. There's the sadness, there's the loss, but we're not adding to that. We're not adding a story to it. So if we can allow ourselves to feel, to really experience, to get to know our suffering, those feelings of resistance, of unsatisfactoriness, of wanting things to be different, if we can fully open to them, then we can see our own role in creating suffering, in perpetuating suffering, and then we can let go. So in the Buddhist teachings, it's the unskillful relationship with our experience it's this craving that the Buddha talked about that's at the root of our suffering. And when we see our own involvement in our suffering, we can see that the problem isn't with the thing. It's not with the annoying neighbors. It's not with the food that I want. It's really with our own relationship to the thing, we might say, the thing that we think we need to have to be happy. It's in the relationship, it's in the craving and in the clinging that the suffering comes. This is the Buddha's second noble truth, craving as a cause of suffering. And when we stay and allow ourselves to feel our feelings, we become aware of our clinging. We have the possibility of letting go of holding, of staying with the difficult, not being in denial about our suffering, not escaping, not acting out. This is the third noble truth, the letting go, the freedom that comes from letting go. So be curious about suffering, because when we're curious about our suffering, it's a step to ending our suffering. As the Buddha said, when we see suffering, we see the cause of suffering, we see the end of suffering, and we see the path to the end of suffering. So when we really pay attention to the unpleasantness, the difficulty, the way the mind is saying, I want this to be different. I want this to end. I want more of these things that I like. When we see that and we really pay attention to it, we also see that in some way there's a holding, a wanting things to be a certain way that's perpetuating this suffering. We also see the possibility of letting go of that holding and of that leading to freedom. And that we see that there's different skillful ways that we can learn to let go. This is the fourth noble truth, the path to the end of suffering. So to find our way to freedom, we need to become familiar with our suffering. Where am I holding? Where am I resisting? So I'll finish by just asking, right now, in this moment, or right now in this day or over these days, where is your suffering? What's calling for attention? Where is the feeling of, I don't like this, I want it to be different, I want more of this, this is boring. What is it that needs to be seen clearly and met with kindness in order to realize greater freedom? So what needs to be seen clearly? What do you need to kind of shine the spotlight on in order to be able to see your own role in perpetuating the suffering and the potential for letting go and finding freedom in the midst of whatever the conditions of life may be? So I invite you to kind of reflect on that, think about it today, think about it over these days. What is causing, where is the suffering? Most of us won't go through a day, I think, unless we're a dog, without experiencing this sense of, unsatisfactoriness, this sense of suffering. And the more we can shine the spotlight on it, the more we can find the gateway, the pathway to freedom from suffering. So I'll leave it there for now. Thank you for your kind attention, and invite Emily to lead us in some mindful movement.
Thank you, Hugh. It was such an inspiring talk. I'd like to invite everyone to open up to the space that they're in, swinging your arms, either at your hips or your shoulders, wherever you're most comfortable doing it. And then open both arms out wide. Inhale, lifting your chest, lifting your head. Exhale, float your arms down, turn your palms out. Inhale again, lifting your arms above your head and grasping your left wrist. Inhale, reach out towards the right, and exhale, tilt. Tilting, lengthening the side of your left. Well, your left side. Breathe into that left rib cage. And back to center. Switch hands, reaching out towards the left, lengthening the last side of your body. Breathing into that right rib cage. And release and float your arms down. Move your shoulders independently. And circle them the other way. Come to center, draw your arms up into cactus arms. Little shoulder movement here. Exhale, float them down. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, float down. Inhale, rise. Exhale, down. Extend your arms out. Turn your left palm up, the right palm down. And on an inhale, we'll switch to looking at the right palm as it is up, and switch back to the left, and switch, and switch. Last time to the right. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders together. And roll them the other way. And now, bring your arms behind your back. Clasp. Inhale, lifting your head and chest. Exhale, draw your arms together, engaging your shoulder blades to bring them together. And then just release to the back of your waist. Inhale, lifting your head and chest. Exhale, drawing your arms below your waist. Well, your hands. And then back to the waist. Release, floating the arms. And then just do a dance, however you might wish to do. No one's watching. Just be engaged with your space. And then come to center. Hands above your knees. Extend your back so it's flat. And then let gravity pull your body towards the earth. Back home. Just reaching down. You can always keep your hands on your shins if you don't feel grounded. It's just a time to connect to the length of your legs, the strength of your pelvis. And then bring your hands back above your knees and roll up the spine, the shoulders and head coming last. Bring your hands to prayer position at the heart. Turn them out to everyone here. Turn them down to the earth. And if you'd like to, exhale and bring them up. So whoosh. Again, drawing that center line down to your heart. Greet everyone here. Turn down to the earth and whoosh. Float your arms down and bow. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. It's lovely as always. Thank you. Please feel free to share anything in the chat that you'd like to. Obviously not confidential, but thank you to others or anything, and or any questions you might have, anything that might have come up for you today in the meditation, in the talk, in the chat, in the group. And you've got a couple of minutes if one or two people have anything you'd like to share, anything that was stirred up for you, or any questions you might have. You can raise your hand physically, or you can raise a hand icon. There's under the reactions. Francine and Henry raised a hand. Francine?
Yeah. So I think, tell me if you think this is correct, Hugh, that the way we're really mostly involved in our own suffering is through our mindset, how we think about something. Is that pretty much the summary of we beat ourselves up about something, or we think it shouldn't be a particular way? Whatever the mindset is, that seems to be the way. So working on your mindset is the way to out of the suffering.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. If as we say a lot in the meditation practice, bringing awareness, bringing kindness and acceptance to our experience plays a huge role in what we are in fact experiencing. We tend to kind of have a somewhat, I guess, binary kind of way of things where you're like, well, here's my experience, here's what I'm experiencing, and here's the way I'm meeting my experience. And naturally we tend to talk in that kind of language. Here's as though there was a solid experience, and here was a kind of a mind state with which I come to this experience. And to a certain extent, that can be a useful kind of shorthand. But really, the experience itself is what's embedded in it is our reaction to the experience. It's not like there is such a thing as an experience existing out there on its own. It's all conditioned and affected by how we respond to it. So in that sense, you're talking about mindset. Yeah, our mindset plays a huge role. If our mindset is one of resistance, of kind of crankiness, or no, I don't like this, I don't want this, then clearly what we're going to be experiencing will be completely colored by that mindset. Conversely, if the mindset is one of, okay, can I be equanimous? Can I be accepting? Can I meet what's here with kindness? It's going to fundamentally transform what we're actually experiencing. The thing we might be experiencing is, oh, I have heard this bad news about something or someone, and you could say that's a kind of a first arrow. That's like, ow, we've got some bad health news or something in terms of a relationship. But if we can be wholehearted and open about that, then it doesn't have to lead to suffering. It could still be something we would prefer didn't happen, hadn't happened.
Right.
But it wouldn't be suffering. It would be, okay, I'm meeting life with an open heart. And in that sense, we transform it. So it's hugely, hugely important. And I think, what you've said about mindset, I think is really, really on the money. Yeah. Thank you, Francine.
I mean, just want to say one thing, Hugh.
Sure.
I had an interesting one. This doctor, okay, so I have this issue, and he said, well, the good news is it was taken out of alignment, and then over 5 months, it went back with a lot of help from him. Okay. And I said, yes, but it's been like a year since, been very painful for a year. And so in the conversation, it was just like, well, maybe a year is a reasonable amount of time. Maybe it takes longer to heal than a year for everything to settle. In other words, I was seeing a year as such a long time. What if it actually isn't? What if that's a reasonable period of time? And so when I started to think that way, all of a sudden, things are not as bad. You know what I mean? You don't have to prefer, but it's just a different lens through which to see the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's like our way of looking, our way of seeing is absolutely fundamental. It's like putting on a pair of glasses and, if they've kind of the wrong lens, you're not going to be able to see through them. But, if the lens, the way we look at our experience fundamentally affects and transforms that experience. So, I mean, in terms of like stepping back and saying, oh, well, what if I looked at it this way? What if I see it this way? And then there's a sense of maybe ease can come with it, a sense of, oh, okay, I was kind of having a tight, it has to be the way I want it to be. It has to be within this period of time, or maybe not. And then, okay, there's some ease. So that's really a lot of what we're cultivating in this training of the mind and training of the heart through mindfulness and compassion and these other skills that we develop. We develop a way of being in the world that allows us to, I often come back to the metaphor of dancing with life, being in that kind of dancing relationship with life, rather than what we're often in, which is life is a wrestling match. And we have to get to submissions. We have to pin it down. Yes, I've got what I wanted, I've done it, whereas that's not like, life doesn't work that way. Life will be life, whatever we want, life will unfold the way, according to its own laws, as it were. And if we can just come into alignment. So what I like a lot about like Eckhart Tolle's teachings, and a lot of other teachers as well. It's very much about that kind of that coming into a relationship of alignment and fluidity, rather than one of struggle. And yes, at times it's right to struggle, and we need to, but from a place of alignment, a place of balance, from that place of relationship. So. Thank you again, Francine. I'm thinking maybe if there isn't anyone else right now, we'll have a short meditation to finish, and a few announcements to finish. Let's just have 2 or 3 minutes of allowing ourselves to kind of open to and process this whole time together. What you've taken in, what you've reflected, any insights that you might be taking with you, any intentions you might have going back into daily life. Appreciating your own efforts today in coming here, taking the time to create a clearing in the dense forest of our lives. And appreciating everyone else who's here. You might say a quiet thank you to everyone, wish everyone well. May you be happy, may you be safe, may you be held in loving kindness, may you live with ease and with kindness. May our collective actions, our collective behaviors over the months and the years ahead help to turn around this incredible crisis, emergency we're living in right now in relation to the planet and the other species that we share the planet with. And may we have the wisdom and the courage and the compassion to act wisely, caring about the well-being of everyone and all the other species, other creatures, and all of our grandchildren and their grandchildren. May we leave a planet that's habitable, people can enjoy. Finish with Donna Markova's poem, I will not die an unlived life. I will not die an unlived life. I will not live in fear of falling or catching fire. I choose to inhabit my days, to allow my living to open me, to make me less afraid, more accessible, to loosen my heart until it becomes a wing, a torch, a promise. I choose to risk my significance, to live so that which came to me as seed goes to the next as blossom, and that which came to me as blossom goes on as fruit. And let me just share a couple of things and then pass it over to Pat. I just want to let you know that on next Saturday, I have a day-long called Practicing the Buddha's Eightfold Path. It goes from 9:30 to 4:30. You can also, or alternatively, not also, alternatively, you can just do the morning or the afternoon session. That's 9:30 to 12:30 is the morning, 1:30 to 4:30 the afternoon, or the whole day. An opportunity to kind of do what we've been doing today, but for a somewhat longer time, longer period of practice. Also share that I'm teaching the New Year's retreat with Afosu Quarty Jones and Tricia Stotler. So check that out, December 26th to January 1st. If you're interested in doing a longer retreat, that's a home retreat as well, online. And have a retreat in Ireland next summer if you want to take a trip farther afield to the west of Ireland. Just to mention that as we do that, there's no set cost for the class today, but you're invited if you're able and inclined to make a donation or dana, gift of dana or generosity that helps support the teacher, in this case me, and helps to allows me to continue teaching. And appreciate your support